Howdy, y'all. I'm Jace, and I'm a sex addict. Each week, I come on and answer questions with regard to myself as an addict or a person in recovery, or now just someone trying to figure out what the heck it means to be healthy and happy. This week, I really liked this question. Um, it's one that I get pretty regularly out in the real world. Um, and a lot of people ask if I've struggled with other addictive behaviors or substances as well. And the answer is absolutely, 1,000%. I have had a um, less than pretty relationship with alcohol. Starting in college, um, I I held off from drinking for a really long time because it was my understanding from information I was giving while growing up that if you have alcoholism in your family, then by drinking alcohol, you could become an addict, an alcoholic as well. And so I even like, oh, just like one drink and you can become an alcoholic. Okay. So I thought, that I should avoid alcohol and then, therefore, I would avoid addiction. What I didn't understand is that addiction is a genetic disease that runs in families, not alcoholism. And so I was just as prone to become an addict, even though I was not drinking alcohol at the time. So I actually thought I found a loophole through sexual acting out because I'm like, boom, not doing drugs, not drinking alcohol, like not going to become an addict. And there's this myth going around that like sex addiction comes from like, okay, I've had like X number of partners or I've had sex this many times and I became an addict as a result. Or people often think that if you drink a lot, that's how you become an alcoholic. Um, those are myths. They've been busted years and years ago, but they're one of those things that like got printed on the front page, everyone believed it, and the retraction has gone unnoticed despite it being the actual scientific facts. So, I believed the same thing too, so I stayed away from alcohol for a good long while until I recognized that my sexual behavior was deemed inappropriate unless there was alcohol involved. So, what was at one point like shocking, inappropriate behavior, once there was alcohol, it's like, oh, that was just a crazy Friday night. And not only was it accepted, it was encouraged and it was facilitated in places where there was alcohol. So they became best buddies because as long as I was drinking, my behavior was to some extent excused or encouraged. And so those became fast friends. I would say my longest running addiction is actually with food, which is the case for a lot of people, even a lot of folks who don't recognize it. And I will note that I am of the camp that believes, and there's a lot of research being done around this right now as well, that there is no food addiction, gambling addiction, sex addiction, substance addiction, that there's just addiction. Addiction is a genetic brain disease that does not distinguish between what act or substance you're actually taking in. So in recovery, they talk about it being like whack-a-mole. So maybe you go into recovery for alcohol and then all of a sudden you are smoking a ton, or you quit smoking and you're eating everything in sight. And it's this idea that you have all of these addictions. I disagree, as do a lot of people working in the addiction sphere. And so the idea is that you have addiction and you find your, your substance or behavior based on access and, environment, availability, all of those things. So food is one that we all have access to really early on. So food has been an addiction for me since as long as I can remember, even before I realized it. The other thing for me was sex is easily accessible. It's something that we all have within ourselves through masturbation, through fantasy, and other things. So that's another one that's really long running for a lot of people, even though, like me, we don't always notice it. I'd say one of my most dangerous addictions was actually with work. Because I thought my worth came from how much I could produce and how useful I could be, or just like how busy am I? That I thought like busyness equated to being important or being useful. And so for me, I could never stop working ever. If I stopped to relax for a moment, I genuinely didn't feel like I was worthy of living. So that's a lot of pressure. to do that. And that's another addiction that's really encouraged. I was good at my job. I was really dedicated. I was a career woman, all of these things. No, I had a problem where I was putting work into this place of my worth. And it was something that I was indeed getting high off of and using it as something that was hiding my other addiction as well. I have struggled with caffeine, also has been another one. Honestly, like addiction really is what's going on in the reward center of our brains and what is in connection with that, which in large part is dopamine. And so I like the saying that, someone was like, there's like a little cartoon and it's like, I only like two things, dopamine and serotonin, and that's the truth, right? And so it's not even the substance or the behavior that the addiction is tied to, it is the anticipated release of the dopamine that is really where the hook gets in. So it can be anything that is dopamine inducing can become a compulsive or addictive behavior. And keep in mind as well that this is not a choice. This is not too many crazy Friday nights and so now you're an alcoholic or a drug addict. This is a brain disease that is already in the brain. It is genetic. It comes down through the family line. Super bummer. I totally know. And then it's triggered usually by early life trauma. So this is not a bad choice that someone made. This is a disease that was passed down through generations and then brought on by the environment and by really dramatic circumstances. So, yeah, I think oh my gosh, screens. Screens are another huge one, whether that's TV, movies, binge watching, the internet, social media. Those are designed to be dopamine inducing. Apps, games on phones, they actually design them to keep you playing them, especially if they have ads in them or have in-app purchases. They design them very specifically to trigger that reward center in your brain so you continue playing them. They're actually like designing addicts, which, I mean, it's a business, but definitely something that should have a warning that goes along with it. And I've gotten caught up in all of those things as well. So now, in addition to being in recovery for addiction, I practice what's called mindful consumption. And that has to do with food, it has to do with drink that comes in, media that I consume as well. And it's basically the idea that I am conscientious and aware and really intentional with what goes inside my body, mind, and spirit. So for me, that means I don't drink alcohol. I have cut sugar pretty much out of my life. I don't eat meat or animal products. I'm really very careful with my social media usage. I know some people get frustrated that I don't engage often or quickly or respond quickly to comments and stuff. I'm not on there very often because it's really damaging for me. So I'm really careful about that. I'm really careful about the TV I watch because I can become really hooked to that. And if it's not something that is serving me well, it affects me big time, and I'm aware of that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any one right way to live when it comes to what we eat, what we drink, what we watch, who we engage with, whatever. It's all this like journey of finding what's right for us. And so this is kind of the system that I'm rocking right now, and it's been feeling pretty good to me. I've been feeling really healthy and really happy and just light in all different areas of my life that I've been practicing mindful consumption now. So that's my jam. I dig it. If you want to know more about addiction and the brain and everything, there's so many amazing resources. I will remind that I am just a recovering addict. I am not an expert on any means. I have talked to a lot of experts and I've done a lot of studying, but I myself have no background in this except a whole lot of life experience. So if you struggle with this stuff or you want to know more, talk to an expert. There's so many great resources out there. You can find some of them on my site, suddenlycelibate.com, or also Google has really amazing things to share, of course. So thank you so much for that question. That was such a great question. And hopefully, I know, so many myths around addiction. And once you know the truth, you're like, how can that be believed by anybody? It doesn't make any sense. But they're out there. That's what myths are all about. So There you go. If you can be addicted to it, I probably have. um, Thank you for that question. And please send in your questions. You can do so through my website, suddenlycelibate.com. And until I see you next time, stay curious.